Welcome to Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine. I'm your host, Jill Jardine, longtime astrologer, psychic healer, and yogi with a master's in counseling psychology. My guest in today's episode is Amirah Hall. Amirah is a spirit medium. She's serving as a bridge between the spiritual and physical world. She has a lot to share in this episode today, so stay tuned. Welcome to the episode with my guest, Amirah Hall. Amirah is a spirit medium. She has been refining her skills as a spiritual medium, teacher, and mentor for 2 decades. She has traveled the world to study various teachings and trained with many advanced enlightened teachers. Amirah has published 3 books, Love Up Your Life, Manifesting Miracles 101, and The Essential Guide to Spiritual Awakening. These are a way to have access to her teachings. For those whom a reading personal session, these are not necessary or outside of one's price range. Over the years, Amirah's profound validation and messages have led to numerous media appearances and high-profile clientele, both of which have helped build a reputation of being the best in the business. Amirah's years of training are evident in her countless profound validations and messages. It makes a session reading with her extremely valuable. She is sought out by those in grief for the pristine quality of the reading they will receive, and for many, a visit with Amirah is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Amirah lives her life to maintain the best channel for spirit and therefore the best psychic medium for her clients. While many professionals leave their work at the office, Amirah embodies many facets of her psychic work throughout each day in order to be the best medium she can be for her clients. All of Amirah's daily routines reflect this truth, from what she chooses to put in her body, the way she arranges her physical surroundings, her physical and mental practices, and other professionals she chooses to seek medical and energetic support from. Amirah talks the talk and walks the walk. I'm very happy and honored to introduce you to my guest today, Amirah Hall. Welcome, Amirah.
Thank you so much, Jill. That was a real mouthful, wasn't it? It's a lot to digest even for me listening to it, and I've been through it.
Right. It's sometimes funny to hear like your bio back to you because you're like, who is that? Who is that person?
Really.
Oh yeah, that's me. So I'm so honored that you're here with us. I just was thinking we'd start off the podcast with you telling my listeners what is your specialty? What is it that you do? And maybe describe what a reading might be like with you if they are interested. I think they're all going to be piqued after this podcast. So you want to let them know what it is that you offer.
Well, it's an interesting journey that I've been on. And quite honestly, one that has all of my clair abilities that have been developed. That's the clairaudience, the clairsentient, the clairvoyance, the clair cognizance. So it's almost like, where do I start? So right now, I see an incredible need for people to process death and the loss of so much in their lives. I've been calling myself a spirit medium, but many of my clients call me the soul mystic because I have a broad range of aspects that I call on when I'm doing a reading. I'm able to dial into energetic pockets within a person. I can see their energy frequency. So if I hear something, I'm guided by that. If I see something or feel something, I communicate that so that we can find the core issue of the problem at bay. And oftentimes people come to me with one issue, but I identify something completely different that's really at the core of the issue. So we often get tricked, don't we, on our path? We think we're looking for one answer, but really the solution comes by answering something else.
Right. That's right. People come, they present with one question or concern, and as you start unraveling the story, you see that the root goes deeper and that they have to clear that deeper piece so that the life goes more in alignment. So I totally get what you're saying. The other thing is that you also have had quite the awakening journey of your own. And I'm sure that the listeners would like to hear about your process in getting to where you are and the awakenings of your own gifts. So, can you give us a brief overview of your own journey to your soul and the soul, what we call cities or the powers of the soul?
Yeah, certainly. I was reflecting on that. It's been a walk of spiritual discovery for over 40 years. And, when we're in the process, when we're healing physical ailments, like I think one of them, because there's been many, many, um, you know, significant, landmarks along the journey. I think the big significant one that I point out that happens for a lot of people that triggers a spiritual awakening is I got divorced. It was still in process when my father died. And then I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and the doctors told me I had two choices: death or wheelchair. And that was back in 1999, 91. And from that, I lost my job because I couldn't work. So I had four massive blows
Whoa, yeah.
and stresses.
Four
And that
losses,
triggered
big loss all at
huge
once.
losses. So that pretty much put me into a cave. I was in a new country. I'm Canadian born. I was in the United States. I didn't have very many friends yet. I was trying to find my way in a foreign country, newly divorced, with no support system. There was no internet. There was nobody talking about autoimmune issues. There was a medical system that told me death or wheelchair. And after crying for 2 weeks, I thought, well, I guess I'm going to live. So I've got to figure it out here. And, that's what started me down the journey of taking personal responsibility. I think the medical system did me a favor, and I couldn't emphasize that enough right now where we're at in time,
Right. That's such a
right?
good point. And I mean, even though it's 30 years later, I don't think that for autoimmune disease, there has been that much forward thinking. People find their healers through alternative, but I think that allopathic medicine hasn't really come that far from where it was in the early 90s. Would you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, there's way more people that are talking about detox. I learned about it, first of all, trial and error. And I wasn't really good at sticking with it. It took me a longer period of time to to heal it, to resolve it, because it was hit and miss. It was a trial and error, and there was absolutely no coaches or no internet to even search for. So I learned that I couldn't trust the medical system. And so it did me a favor, because I think what's happening right now is people are being shaken at the core. Their fear of dying is so great that it is derailing them on their path, or it's catapulting other people into, I got to do this now because it's do or die. Oh, pardon the pun. It's like, just go for it. So there's two sides I'm seeing. But it is a wake up call. It is shaking us up to listen to our intuition, what feels and sounds right to you, and all of those traumas get triggered. So I processed all that. I started to get more healthy. I got back into where I was before that, which was in corporate. I was working in executive sales. And what happened over time, I got, I don't want to say fat and happy. I didn't quite, but I started getting into the groove of that corporate lifestyle, eating out again and going to fine dining and drinking and partying and really enjoying a better life. But then something happened, and I started hearing this little call to go. I kept hearing do 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 do, like a little sound in my head, and I had no clue what that was. I knew I wasn't going nuts, but I wasn't, it was an intermittent thing. So finally, I got this brochure from this friend about this trip to Peru. And that's when I thought, well, what, if I get my tax return, a refund, then I'm going to go to Peru. And so I found myself in Peru like 4 months later in a journey in the Amazon with a shaman, and exploring that whole thing. I had no idea what ayahuasca was. I had no idea what the sacred ceremony was. I had no idea. I didn't go there for that. It wasn't a commercialized journey at that time, right?
Right. Oh my
Now
gosh.
we're
You
talking 1997.
Oh wow, yeah, before people even knew what ayahuasca was around here. So that was a big 180-degree turn from corporate world to like journeying
Well,
in the Amazon, doing ayahuasca, having psychedelic experiences.
Well, and I didn't know what that was. I didn't really even know. I'm not a person that's indulged in or experimented with drugs. I didn't even really know what psychedelic. I kind of perceived what that was by the word, but I think they call it an hallucinogenic. So
Oh right.
even then, I didn't know what that meant. All I know is from San Diego to Lima, Peru, I cried. I cried on the plane. I cried in strangers' arms. I was really having a meltdown because I could feel something big coming.
Right.
I knew that a part of me was dying, and I thought maybe the plane was going to crash. I mean, that was my mindset. And so it didn't. I got to the jungle, I did that. And one of the ceremony processes for me was I saw myself coming through a stargate as a star seed. And I didn't know that word. I just went, what? It's shaped in the shape of a diamond, like four-sided. They called it a stargate. And keep in mind, this is in 1997. I don't even think Stargate was created
Oh
yet.
yeah, it was. There
Maybe it
was a
was.
lot.
Was it?
We were all plugged into that. There was,
Okay.
I had a star chamber Stargate in my
Oh,
healing room in my
oh
house.
wow.
So yeah, there were pockets of people who were very
Okay.
tuned into all of this,
So
and
I was not,
yeah,
but I
so
had to
there
go
you were
down there to
found it.
figure it out.
You were
Yeah.
called to it. Yeah, that's excellent. So what happened, and what
So
kind of
so
stuff did the shaman do with you down there?
oh well, in the initial stage, the first day, I it was an interesting because I had a cracking headache that I thought my head was going to blow off. I didn't vomit like everybody else did because I had been detoxing. I detoxed for about a month before I went down there. And so none of that happened for me, but my head was going to split open. And I had like four shaman working on me, rattling and chanting and singing. And for a good hour and a half, it seemed like eternity at the time. And all of a sudden, I saw this great puff of smoke spiral out of my forehead. And in that moment, I knew it was a person, a spiritual person that I had worked with while I was in San Diego. Other friends had connected me to this man who called himself a shaman. And I say that because there's a lot of people that call themselves
Right,
things.
fake
And
shamans.
that's why I think I have such a hard time labeling what I do. You know, when you're following the light or you're a light worker, even that's limiting, right?
Right.
But when all your spiritual abilities open up, you're all of it. You can access any of it. So anyway, I saw his energy unplugged from my sixth chakra, and it was like he was plugged into my power source, my vision inside my head. And it was like a huge aha moment. In that moment, I knew I had to unplug from all those friends in San Diego when I went back.
So it was like an interference or almost
Yes,
like an entity possession,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And
And
you
and he was a living person.
right.
So
So
for
he
me, that
wow.
was pretty profound.
That's a teaching for all the listeners out there. People just dabble and they're not really sure what I was just talking to a client about this today. They dabble and then they get entities and they don't know what that is, but they're not quite themselves and it interferes with their connection to source. So
Absolutely.
that was
Absolutely. I completely 1,000% agree with you. And in fact, that's one thing I help people with is detaching. So there could be a lot of things. It could be a guru that you worked with
right.
because the guru game is where you actually plug into your guru. You're not plugging into the source. You're plugging into the guru's source through the guru. So it's like a bypass, or even like they call it a backup power or a UPS.
Well, yeah,
It's a gateway.
it's the old Piscean paradigm of that you need a mediator to get to source, where here in the Aquarian age, we can go directly to source. Now, there are teachers that will help you do that. They just get out of the way. It's almost like they do the Shakti. They light you up, but then you do all your own work, you know, so
Well,
it's
that's the key is
yeah,
finding a mentor that isn't going to suck your juices, so to speak, but help you align with your own and help you raise the vibration, hold you in a space where you can raise up without, backtracking. And yet it's an empowerment, not, and true empowerment has to do with energetics.
Right.
And there's a lot of teachers out there that haven't learned that. I see, especially in the West, they
Yeah.
haven't learned that.
Well, they still have ego. They have ego
Yeah,
attachment
and
to,
it
like,
becomes manipulation, doesn't it?
right. They want to be the teacher. They're not there to open up the client or the student to their own source. They want to somehow be an intermediary, and that's just not how it works. So, all right, well, continuing with your story, after that
Okay.
shaman
So yeah,
detached
that
you
was
from
pretty
the
profound,
entity and cleared you, what
right?
happened?
Well, the next day I saw this. I came through the Stargate, and I was shown that I came to Earth at the early stages of Egypt. And it wasn't really Egypt as we know it today. It was a much greater area that it encompassed. It felt more like Iraq or somewhere in that vicinity, but I didn't follow it. I didn't need to know. That's when my soul embodied a human form. That's all I know.
Wow.
I didn't go down the trail of digging more. I didn't need to. That was sufficient for me just to know that. I kind of let go of it for a lot of years, but I knew in that moment I needed to go to Egypt. I knew that was the next stepping stone that I needed to take. And I got back to San Diego. I remember the shaman saying, hold on to the light. Hold on to the light as long as you can. And I felt it for about a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks after I returned, and I felt it slowly fade. It's
Right.
because the vibration is so much lower in the community where I was at, and it was really hard to hold on to that super high vibration.
Right. That's people
Yeah.
need to understand that when they go to these vortex or spiritual sites around the planet, you feel like so plugged in. Then you go back to your, the density of San Diego or the density of whatever.
Anywhere, a
Yeah.
big city. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever city in America, or density. It doesn't even have to be a city, of the environment you're in. If it's not,
Your
connected.
society.
Right. Your
Absolutely.
society, you're going to lose it. And it takes so much more to maintain the light. That's a great point to
Well, and I
alert
also
people
also want
to.
to say that happens, Jill, even when we go to a weekend workshop. Or
Exactly.
we go, we get our fix, because there's seminar junkies and workshop junkies, and they go from one to the next, or they find a teacher. I don't want to mention any branded names, but they become like their followers and their
Right.
groupies, and they go to get their fix. And a couple months later, they need another plug-in, right? And all they're doing is basically plugging into the guru, and it's not their true vibration. So yeah, so I figured out that I needed to go to Egypt, and I found somebody that was going to Egypt, had a group going, and I joined the tour, and that was in 1998, and that was truly life transformational. I saw granite statues smile at me. I heard
Wow.
celestials, chanting, and in the temples. I can't even remember all of the most profound spiritual moments, but it was just off the charts.
Did
And
you?
I've been back 13
Oh
times
my
since. And
gosh, 13.
yeah,
So do you ever get any past life flashbacks when you're there in Egypt? Have you had that?
absolutely. I mean, and that was one of the things when I landed there. Everything felt so familiar. It was like, I'm home. I'm home.
So you found your soul
And
home. You found
oh,
your.
it was truly, I can't find the words to really define it or explain it, you know? And I hear that from so many of the people. I take groups. In fact, I've got one coming up in October this year, and it will be a sacred journey where we're going to actually do ceremony inside the Great Pyramid, private, on the Great Eclipse, and that's
Oh my gosh. So
significant.
yeah, so you've been there to Egypt 18 times, so this will be
No,
19,
13. I think
13.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
so this will be 14 then. And give us the date. Let listeners know, because I'm sure people will be
Well, the
interested in
dates
this.
have not been absolutely solidified, but it will be at the end of October through November. So November, I think it's 6th or 8th is the eclipse.
The 8th, November
So
8th is
yeah,
the
eh,
lunar eclipse, Scorpio, Sun, Taurus,
right.
Moon. But the solar eclipse leading up to that is the 25th of October. So you're probably going to be there for the eclipse window then.
That's what we're aiming for. So we're working out the logistics right now, waiting for Egypt to get back to us. So you know how that goes. Well, maybe if you don't, they're just a little bit slower.
Okay. So how many people will you bring? Like, what's your group
Well,
size?
our maximum size is going to be 30. I like to work with intimate groups. Myself and Mary Lamondo is hosting it. Mary is an astrologer herself, and she lives in Luxor part time. She's an Egyptologist in her own right, and she's an American born. So she explains what we see from a whole different level. It's more of a spiritual understanding, and yeah, versus the classic Egyptology, because a lot of the stories and the information that we start receiving is quite different than what the textbooks
Oh,
say.
that
So
sounds so exciting. My guest today is Amirah Hall. You can check her out at her website, www.amirah, A-M-I-R-A-H, Hall, H-A-L-L, all one word, .com. And check out her offerings. When we come back, Amirah will tell us more about near-death experience and spiritual awakening. So stay tuned. Welcome back. My guest today is Amirah Hall. Amirah, you talk about a near death experience in your book. Can you tell our listeners more about your NDE, near death experience?
it's quite the journey, actually. That also happened because of some drugs.
Uh oh.
I'm not somebody that does pot. I just want to put that out there. Or any drugs really. And what happened was I was buying beads. It was my last day there, and I bought some beads because I'm a jewelry designer. And I was buying these little antiquities to incorporate in my jewelry making.
You mean
So I
in
went back.
Egypt? In Egypt?
Yeah, I was
Oh,
buying the
okay.
antiquity, the ancient beads that,
Okay.
see, it was in outside the Valley of the Kings, this small town called Kurna, and their houses at this time were perched up right against the mountain, so their homes would have a wall at the back. Right, the mountain was their wall, so they would dig holes, jackhammer at night, and then in the day they would cover that hole up with a carpet. So they were digging in the mountain all the time, and I figured somebody in that little village must have had the antiquities or some of these little beads, some treasures that I could take home. Well, long story short, I found the beads, and I went to pick them up, had my money to pay the guy who was a friend of a friend, and that's how I found it. And it turns out they, celebrate when you buy something. You sit and you visit. You have a cup of coffee, you have some tea or a Coca-Cola, water, and they visit. Well, this time they brought out a joint, and all of a sudden, like 10 guys showed up in the room. And I said, thank you, I don't smoke. And they started shouting. Mohammed was the guy, and his arms were in the air, and he was getting louder and louder. I'm the only female. I'm trying to keep the peace. I don't like confrontation anyway. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I've insulted him. No, thank you, I don't smoke. And he goes, it's the best, it's the best. And I'm like, oh no.
Uh
So
oh.
I'm thinking, okay, well, I've smoked a couple times. It never did anything for me. So, all right, I better keep the peace, and I don't want anything crazy to happen here. So I did. The joint went around a couple times, and everybody bounced up and ready to walk out the door, except for me. I couldn't move my arms and I couldn't move my legs.
Oh my gosh.
And I found myself standing behind myself. And I didn't know what was happening other than I could see everybody out in front of me. It was like their life became a movie screen. And I could see, like I was looking at, I don't know how many guys were there, 10 guys, like I was at Circuit City looking at all these video shots running, and it was freaky. And so I must have put my hand, well, I did put my hands out in front of me. I don't recall saying anything. I couldn't hear myself say anything because I'm standing behind me, but I'm bouncing back and forth. And I'm thinking, if I just get some water on my face, I can stay in my body. And I went and I put my hands out. My friend looked like he was in slow motion walking towards me. And he poured this water into my hands. And I was watching this whole thing. And I remember thinking, oh shit, my mascara is going to run.
As you're out of your physical body, in your
Yeah.
spirit body, trying to get back into the physical, you're worrying about your mascara.
Yeah, yeah. And so, and in the village and nowhere, right? But yeah, I was worried about my mascara. So then everything went black.
Uh-oh.
And I don't remember any of this part. They told me I collapsed on the floor. They pounded my chest, that my heart stopped, my breathing stopped. They were pounding with all their might. And in retrospect, I call that Egyptian CPR, because it was rather primitive. They dragged me out under the arms, loaded me into a truck. They put me in the cab of the truck with my head out the window, barreling down the road, trying to get me air. This truck was a taxi, so the back of it was loaded up with people.
Oh my
And
gosh.
there I am in the cab, and they're trying to get me to the hospital. When this is the part, I remember seeing myself shooting through the sky like a comet. And I'm just this light streak. And I could see, oh, where am I going? And then I could see this small ball way off in front of me. And then it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and going, oh, I remember, I'm there. And then it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm like, oh, it's so big. How am I going to find myself? And then I heard this language, and I'm like, I don't know that language. And then I went, oh, I remember, that's Egypt. And then I found my body, but it was like trying to put on wet clothes. Have you ever
Oh,
tried putting on wet clothes or a
oh,
wetsuit?
yeah, that's
It's
wild.
so it's sticky and icky, and I struggled and struggled trying to get into my body. Well, then it seemed like I couldn't open my eyes. It was so bright, and I couldn't, for the life of me, I sat there for the longest time trying to just open my eyes. And because this was about noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so high brightness. And I remember just sort of reaching out, sort of feeling my way around because I could hear the voices. And I touched my friend's arm. Well, they just freaked out in Arabic.
Oh, wow.
It's like oh my God, she's alive or something like that. And so they're shouting, and I just said, where are you taking me? And they said in Arabic. They forgot. They were nervous, right? And then he spoke in English, and he said, to the hospital, to the hospital. The only thing I could think of was, oh my God, I'm in the village in Egypt. That place will kill me. So all I could think of was germs or
Yeah.
something really
Oh, yeah,
primitive
yeah.
and
The
antiquated,
primitive
right?
hospital in Egypt, right. Oh, how much
Right.
how
So
much time had gone by from the time that you
I
basic
have no idea, but probably a couple minutes,
Okay.
maybe five,
Okay.
because they had to get the taxi, and they were screaming on the street and yelling and screaming for the taxi to come or a ride, and then, dragging me out and doing so. I don't know.
And
All
then
I know is the year before that, in 1997, there was a massacre. I think 31 people died at Queen Hatshepsut Temple, which wasn't even 3 or 5 miles down the road. So they were freaked out because if anything happened to an American at that time, or at any time,
Oh, yeah.
they would lose everything. They would lose their livelihood. They would lose the whole family would go to jail,
Right, right.
and they
Oh,
don't
wow.
fool around.
Wow, that was some
So,
potent pot. I'm sure you haven't smoked
well,
since, right?
no, I don't even go near people that have. But the point is, that wasn't the end of it, because
Uh-oh. Keep
I
going.
could
What
I
happened
couldn't.
next?
I said I need a toilet, and so they're flipping out, thinking where can they take, because the toilets are holes in the wall, and they
Oh,
know that I can't stand.
yeah.
I'm just completely weak and propped up. So I needed a proper toilet, and that was a a rarity in the village. But his brother had one in his flat, so they brought me there. They had to carry me up 3 flights of stairs, got me in there, and brought me into the bathroom. And I wouldn't let my friend Juju leave me. And of course, this is another calamity, because in that culture, a woman should not be alone with a man in a private room like this because they think we're definitely having sex.
Right.
Of course, I didn't know that. The sister-in-law is pounding on the door, freaking out, right? He's sitting on the bathtub next to me and tears are streaming down his face. And I'm thinking, what's wrong? I was in total bliss, total peace, total joy and love. And he just said, you don't understand. You died. You died. And he kept saying this over and over. I said, I'm fine. I'm fine. And I'm thinking I'm really cool and ladylike because I've got my dress pulled down over my knees, covering my butt and my legs on the toilet, right? And so I'm thinking, well, I'm proper. And so anyway, they finally got me to the bed after I was done there, and I laid down for several hours. And what happened was, this is when I really started hallucinating, or I realized I was seeing through dimensions, because I started seeing the goddess Sekhmet in the armoire and the cabinet in front of me. And every time I looked at the wood grain, I could see Sekhmet. If I looked out into the Nile Valley, there was this beautiful window with fluttering drapery, and it was a breeze coming in the room, and this lush green Nile Valley out there. And I just think, that's real. I got to keep looking out there. That's real. And every time I look back, so I'm like, I'm seeing things that aren't here. But this continued till I had to get a flight from Luxor to Cairo, Cairo to New York, Atlanta. That's almost 22 hours. And I was still seeing that. So you tell me those are the effects of pot?
Whoa. So how many days later? I mean, how many days before
Well,
you left from when you had the
I
experience?
left that day.
Oh my gosh. In
So I
that
was
state?
traveling.
How was that?
I finally was able to walk about 3 or 4 hours later. And I was wobbly, but I was in total bliss, like you couldn't imagine. And when I got to the airport, Mary and Vonda, the two tour guides that were with me, they were there because I had extended my tour, my work. This doesn't happen for most people on our tours, by the way.
Yeah.
So I asked them, who's this goddess, the lion face and the female body? They went, oh, that's Sekhmet. Because at the time, I wasn't really plugged into Egyptology. It didn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool and interesting, but I didn't really get it,
So
Yeah.
So you had what we call a darshan or visitation with Sekhmet in that altered state. And then just wrapping up the story, so you had, as a result of that, you had these gifts that opened your consciousness and allowed you to see between worlds and connect with the other side. So how long did that continue when you got back to the States?
When I arrived in JFK, all the people there in the airport, in the jetway from there to the waiting area, looked like black and white paper dolls, flat, two-dimensional, and I was horrified. And I was stuck in that space. I stopped seeing the white paper dolls, or black and white, when I arrived in San Diego. The fresh air and the moist air hit me.
Right.
And that shifted. But then it took me some time to then learn what happened to me.
Right. That's about right.
And
New York is black and white paper dolls, and then you get color vision against when you get back to San Diego.
I don't know about that so much, but that's when the journey of really awakening began.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh. Amirah Hall is my guest. Thank you for sharing your story of spiritual awakening and your near-death experience. And stay tuned for part 2 when Amirah talks about her books, Manifesting Miracles 101, The Essential Guide to Spiritual Awakening, and Love Up Your Life. Thank you, Amirah.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with my guest, Amirah Hall. Stay tuned for part 2, coming soon. Make sure you download, you share, and give us a 5-star review. This is Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine signing out, sending you healing spiritual vibrations through the quantum field.